Hello, my name is Will, and welcome to another Cinema 4D tutorial. This tutorial is just going to cover the basics of Cinema 4D and be a real introduction for anybody who's never used it before. So I'm going to assume that you've never been in Cinema 4D before, and this is the very first time. So all this is going to seem really daunting, and we're going to cover what all these different buttons do. So the first thing we need to cover is this object viewer right here. This is the most important window, considering that this is where we're going to be making the magic happen. This is where we're going to be seeing our objects. So to get around this window, we need to use these little buttons right here. So the first one on the left right here is our move tool. This just moves our view from left to right and also up and down so we can reposition our view. Next one, this kind of forward back arrow, is literally moves your view forward and back. So it's zoom, zoom out, zooming and zoom out. This next one here, this kind of turning wheel, is our rotation. So this allows us to rotate our view so we can move it around and move around in our scene. So now that we've got that covered, let's add something to our scene. If you go up here, these are all the tools to use to make stuff happen within our scene. So the first thing on the very left, the most important, is to make objects. So we're going to click this and open it up. So these, if you just let go on any one of these objects, it'll make anything. So obviously this is a tube. I don't want a tube for the sake of this tutorial. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to click a basic sphere. So now that I've made a sphere, and actually no, I think I want a cube. So I'm just going to go, and as you can see, I can rotate my view around my cube to get different angles, and I can get further and closer if I want by using these movement tools right here. Also, now that we've made our first object, we need to learn about this object manager window. This window is where all the tools and objects we put into our scene are going to be located. So as you can see, the cube is the very first thing, and say I want to add another cube, click this, drop it down. Now I can see I have cube 1. Now I have 2 cubes within my scene, and maybe I just want to make a cone too. So you can see I have cone and my 2 cubes. So now we're going to talk about moving these objects around, because as you can see, they are all created at the same place, which is no good for us because we can't see them. So I'm going to click my first cube, and it's going to get highlighted like this. Make sure whatever you're trying to work with is clicked and highlighted, because otherwise you're going to be moving the wrong thing and you're just going to get really frustrated. And I can just remember when I was a beginner making all these mistakes and just getting really pissed off. So remember, if something's not working, make sure you have the right thing selected. So we're going to click our second cube we made, and now we're going to learn about these tools right here. These tools are very similar to the movement tools that we just learned about, but instead of moving our view, they move our objects. So we're going to select our cube, and we're going to use this first moving tool. If you hover over it, you can see it says move. Pretty simple. This next one is scale, and then finally this turning one is rotate. So we're going to grab our move tool, and we're just going to move our cube over here. We're going to grab the scale tool by clicking on it, and we're just going to scale our cube down a little bit. And then we're going to grab this rotate tool, and we're just going to rotate it a little bit. So already we're having something much more interesting than what we started with. And I'm just going to grab my cone and move it on out of there as well. So now that I've created something, I want to view it. So to do that, we're going to go to our render tab. So this is the render view. You click on this, and it renders what we've made in the scene. So that's fabulous. All right. And I'm not really happy with what I've made because it's not very pretty. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go down to this new panel down here. This is the next very important panel we're going to cover, and this is where we're going to make the materials for our objects. The material is kind of just like a color and texture. Anything that goes on the surface of our shapes is called a material. So I'm going to double click within here, and whenever you double click, it just makes a new material by default. So you can take this and either drop it down on the shape that you want, or you can drag it into the objects manager and drag it onto the shape there. And right now what we've made are white shapes because it defaults to white, and I don't want that. I want to make them red. So I'm going to double click that material I just made, and I now have this new window that will appear, and this new window will have all the attributes that I can change within this new material. So all we're going to deal with today is the color. So right now, see luminance is highlighted and selected. I'm going to make sure color is selected. Now the color is on. I'm going to go to this color box right here, and I'm just going to make them red. As you can see, since my materials were already applied to my objects, it automatically changed to red. Ta-da! And next we're going to learn how we can render out this beautiful picture we just made so we can post it on the internet, and we can share it, show your mom, do whatever. But before we do that, we want to make this just a little bit prettier just for the sake of this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to make a floor. Remember, these tools are things that go within your scene. So I'm going to click this for the drop down, and I'm going to make a floor. A floor is what it is. It's a floor, but it's infinite. So I'm just going to drag my floor down to the very bottom of my cube, so it looks like it's resting on the floor. And now if I hit render, I can see I have this infinite floor that's going forever. But that looks no good as well. What the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a light. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to click light. My light starts at 0.0 like all my other shapes, so it's going to be inside, making everything completely dark and horrible. So you just want to click the light, move it on out of there, and you're probably going to want to position it in the front of your objects, a little off to the side, so you can clearly see all the surfaces in your view that you want to show people. And now we're going to hit render again, and this is already looking much better. But one thing that this is missing, which is extremely important to making a realistic render, is shadowing. So we're going to click our light, and we're going to go into its settings. And within these settings, we can change the shadowing. Now remember, within all the objects and all the things we make, when they're clicked and highlighted, they have settings that you can edit. So see, I have my cube selected. I can edit these settings. Floor is pretty simple. It's a floor. It has no settings. So we're going to go to our light. And there's all these different tabs to edit different attributes of the light. But since this is an introduction tutorial, we're going to cover the general attributes of this. So we're going to click this general tab, make sure that it's selected. We're going to go on down here to type, and we can see that it's an omni light. That's fine. Omni light means it starts at one point, like this point we have here, and light shoots off in all directions from it. Kind of like a light bulb. Light shoots off in all directions from a light bulb. So next we're going to go down to shadow, like I mentioned, and we're going to change the shadow type from none to soft. Now when we change to soft, it's going to give it a nice soft shadowing. So that is looking much better already. All right. So now that I have something that I think that I would like to show my mom, I want to render this out so I can have like a JPEG file, an image file that I can share around on Facebook or whatever, post to YouTube. So now remember we covered this render tab. Now we're going to go over to this edit render settings tab. And if you're ever wondering what these buttons mean, if you hover over them, they should just say. And if they have arrows on them, if you hold it, it's always going to be a drop-down menu. So now we're going to go to our edit settings. And here we can change the size of our file. So this is going to be real handy. So now, before we edit the size of our file, I want you to pay attention to these gray bars right here. They're on both sides of my image. These gray bars represent where your image is going to get cut off. The area and space within here isn't going to render in your final product. Right now, we're going to go ahead and set this film aspect. So this is the aspect in here. Remember that. The aspect to a square. So that's the simplest, easy way to visualize it. What we're going to be rendering is the shape of this square, and it's the light area in the center. Everything in these gray boxes is going to be cut off. We don't want that. We want something kind of like widescreen, kind of modern looking, just like kind of like an industry standard shape. So we're going to go up here to width and height. We're going to change the width to 1280. And we're going to change the height to 720. And what we've done is we've made a 720p HD size. When you see 720p or 1080p, that always stands for the height, how many pixels it is high. And if we go down to the film aspect, we can see it's now changed to HD TV 16 by 9. So square was 1:1, HD TV 16 by 9. Perfect. So now that we have this nice output size, now it's in kind of like a suitable format that we can use. Oh, and now that you might have noticed these gray bars are gone, they're still there, just my window is adjusted for it. So if you grab down here, like right above this timeline, you're gonna get these arrows. You can change the size of your picture viewer. And if I stretch it just out larger, I can see I've made it larger than the size we've selected. So these gray bars, remember, will not have anything in them. But I'm just gonna shrink it back up so I don't have to worry about that. So now I want to finish rendering this. So now that I've edited my settings, I'm going to go into this middle tab, click here, render to picture viewer, and it's so simple, it's already done. Your computer might take a little bit longer if it's not as strong, and you can see this one frame over here has been rendered and it's ready to be saved. So once you've clicked this and this window pops up, you can just go down to File, Save As. We're going to go to the type, make sure it's selected still image. Format, I either go with PNG or JPEG. PNG is just, it's basically, I'm sure you've heard of a JPEG, which is just a standard image. PNG is a newer version of that, kind of for web. So I'm just going to hit OK and OK. And this is pretty self-intuitive. We're just going to select where we want to save it to. Desktop, change the name, great render, and just hit save. Now if you go to the desktop, mine is really dirty, I'm not going to show you that. It will be saved to your desktop in as either a JPEG or PNG or whatever you selected. You can then upload that to the internet, email it, do whatever you want with it. All right, and now this is kind of a checkpoint in this tutorial. We've covered a lot of basic tools, and I'm just going to continue to go more in depth with these. So you can either choose to continue watching if you want to learn more, or just go and have your own fun time on your own if you want. So, second half tutorial, here we go. Like I mentioned with the lights before, has many settings. If you click on them, we're just going to go talk about polygons now. So when I go into my objects and click on them and highlight them, I can change the settings of how many segments, which basically just means how many times we divide the surface of polygons. But since we can't really see that, we're going to have to change our display. I'm going to go up to display. Right now it's at GURAD shading, which basically means it's going to give us these shadows, these predicted shadows and highlights on our objects. We're just going to go down to GURAD shading lines. And what lines means is the lines in between the polygons. So as you can see, since our cone is kind of a complex shape, it has lots of polygons to make it be able to be rounded. So we're just going to go to our cube. Okay, cube. Oh no, sorry, cone. That was the cone. Now we're on the cube. Okay, so that's selected. And we have size, XYZ, and segments, XYZ. So XYZ, if you've been in geometry, you should know, is how it's calculating 3D space, basically. Y would be this up and down. This green one, X is the red for left and right, and Z is this blue one for forward and backwards. You can also see in this little compass right here, it tells you Y, Z, X. So you don't have to guess as much over here. So what I want to do is I want to make this wider. So if I want to do that, I can see that that's the red arrow, which is the X. Go over here to the X and just scale this up. So now instead of a cube, now we have a rectangle. So remember, you can use all these different shapes to make different things in your scene. Say I wanted to make a house with a wall. I could have a cube over here, and then put where's a pyramid on top of it for the roof. Just doing this really fast for the sake of getting you guys through this tutorial. All right, roof, house, ta-da. It's a house behind a wall, and there's an aggressive cone attacking them. So it's really up to your imagination how you use these tools and how far you take them. So we're just going to continue with learning about this. Back to where we were. Back to the cube. So make sure your cube is selected, or whatever you were working on is selected. And now that we've learned about the size, we can learn about the segments. So as you can see here, this has a ton of segments, and we just want to add some segments to our wall. So if I turn this up from 1, you can see it immediately reacts in real time and just starts adding these polygons. So that's pretty neat. And what a polygon is basically just a flat shape. So we just have a bunch of square polygons all connected together to create this shape. Just like the cone, we have all these polygons connected together to create this cone. But we need more polygons for this to make the rounding. That's why a cube only starts off with 1, because that's all it needs. It's a simple shape. It only needs 1 polygon on each side. This needs many so it can go around the circle. You see the edge of them? The edge of this is kind of created by all these straight segments, but there's so many of them that it looks like a circle. Kind of like the Earth. You look straight across the Earth, it looks flat, but if you zoom out, you can really see that it's a circle. So that's really all we can cover in this basic tutorial. It's really up to your imagination. I don't want to overload your brain so soon, so we're going to have more tutorials that go more in depth with these settings, another tutorial that goes more in depth with colors, and so on and so forth. And I hope to see you then. If there's anything else you want to learn, just message me, comment to here. I'll either answer your comment quickly or just make a tutorial about it if it's a really big question. So hopefully this helped, and thank you for watching.